Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Betty Eats podcast, where we talk about real recipes created by real people, no AI stuff. And we're going to learn about how to spot a good recipe as we talk to different food bloggers and food creators, food writers, cookbook authors. And so today on the podcast, I'm very excited to talk to Douglas. Many of you already know Douglas Cullen from his newsletter, Inspired by Mexico, which focuses on Mexican food and drinks. And so, welcome, Douglas. And I wanted you
Uh,
to tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the listeners.
okay. Well, like I said, I'm Douglas Cullen, and I publish the Mexican Food Journal. It's a Mexican food blog, and also the Substack, the Inspired by Mexico, which is kind of the project that we're migrating to more. I'm a resident of Mexico for 25 years. Currently, I'm in South Texas, but I was in Mexico for 25 years, living in 4 different cities: Durango, Monterrey, Puerto Vallarta, and the last place we were was San Miguel de Allende. And so I didn't grow up eating Mexican food at all, even though I grew up in Southern California. In my house, we didn't eat a lot of Mexican food. And so I learned to love it. I like to cook. And so, over the years, that I got more and more involved in food and cooking, and then kind of the idea, this was about 10 years ago with the Mexican Food Journal, was to, it's like all the things that I'm learning. And I like to share the recipes. I'm a teacher by trade. But we also had, for about half the time I was in Mexico, coffee shops and a cafe. So bookended, teaching at the beginning, coffee shops and cafes in the middle, teaching at the end. But I like sharing the food, I like sharing the recipes. And in San Miguel de Allende, I started working with Andres Carnea, who's a photographer. Our kids were at the same school. We met in the pickup line, waiting for our kids. We got talking, and that's kind of how the whole Mexican Food Journal, and now getting into Inspired by Mexico. So I guess that's the basic background.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So that's so interesting that you did not grow up eating Mexican food, even though, California does have a lot of Mexican food. But so what made you decide to move to Mexico all those years ago?
it just happened. It literally, a friend called me one summer and said, "Hey, there's a teaching job in Mexico for the summer. It's 5 weeks. You want to go?" And I said, "Sounds cool. Let me think about it." I said, "Well, deadline to apply is today."
Oh,
So three of us from three friends, we all applied that day, and a week later we hopped on a bus in Tijuana and went from Tijuana to Durango. And so it was supposed to be a 5 week program. It became 6 months, and then 6 months became 25 years. So it was not really a planned out thing,
oh,
but
okay.
I went and I liked it, and I was teaching, and so then I started looking for a teaching position, and like a full-time position, and I ended up in Monterrey, and where I was working at the University of Monterrey.
Wow.
And so that's how I got to Mexico. And I do remember kind of right when we got there, the first morning we got in and they took us out to eat. And it took us to I think it was the Hotel Gobernador, and I ordered huevos rancheros,
Oh,
and it was really spicy. As I didn't grow up, there was nothing spicy in my house. My culinary roots are, England, Scotland, that's kind of where
okay.
the older generations are from.
Yeah.
So, and even though I grew up in California, it was never really a thing in my house. So I thought, and that dish, the first day, it's like, oh, this is so hot. I'll never make it here. What am I going to do? I can't eat this food. That, little by little, get used to it. You start to, and it's like, hey, it's actually pretty good. And at least I found that, kind of over time, you become accustomed to it, and it's like, well, this is actually pretty good. And then, now if something doesn't have chili in it, it's like, well, it's kind of lacking. It needs a little heat, right?
So
But
you're
yeah,
on the
so that,
other end of the spectrum now of like,
right. And so now, pretty much everything's good. There are dishes. It's like that, even now, that's too much, but
hmm,
But so yeah, so that's where it started.
Oh my goodness. So that's so interesting that you really just kind of, like you said, fell into it. It wasn't like, I'm planning on moving, I'm doing all this research, I'm going to do this, but it was just sort of like you went and you stayed and loved it, obviously. So,
Yeah, and this was all pre-internet, so you couldn't research a lot. It was different world, so there wasn't a
mm,
lot. I didn't have a lot of information going like you could get now, and
mm,
it was just one of those things. It's like, okay.
hmm.
And so it turned out well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, now because you've lived in, it sounds like different areas of Mexico as
hmm
well, something that I know very little of, but I do know just because I used to also live in Texas for a time, how the immigrants in Texas, they come from sometimes a different part of Mexico than they do here in California. And so the
hmm
cuisine is, yes, it's Mexican food, but sometimes, it can be from a different state of Mexico. So it's very different.
yeah.
So I'm sure that you probably saw that firsthand and in depth. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
I mean the food from Mexico that I know best is kind of central Mexico and
Mhm.
northern Mexico because that's
Um,
mainly where I live. Like, I've traveled to Oaxaca and Oaxaca has a lot of different dishes than you might find. There's commonalities throughout,
mhm.
but there's a lot of regional variation
Mm,
as you go.
right.
And so but and then like you said, like in different parts of you might have different parts of Texas, the Mexican food would be different because people came from different parts of Mexico. I
Mm,
would agree with that for sure. So
yeah. 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 It's so
and
interesting. I know when I did go back to Texas a few years ago, and
hmm
when I lived there, I loved Tex-Mex,
right.
and I hadn't been to Texas in a while, and I've been here in California for almost 3 decades, and so when I went there and I had Tex-Mex, I was like, wait, this is so different from what I'm eating in California,
Right.
and tiny differences, but you really do notice just even
There's
different
a big
spices.
difference. 'Cause I would call it because you are used to CalMex. And
Yes.
there's certain kind of food trends in like it seems like born and raised in California, but haven't
Mm,
lived there for quite a while. But it does seem like that all of the mix, like cabbage is a big thing that you on everything in California. Like when
mm,
you go tacos, and there's a lot of like that's like a little detail, and you don't see that as much here. And I'm in South Texas, very deep South Texas. I'm about 10 miles north of the Mexican border. So the food here is different than the food in Austin,
mm.
even.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
That's a good point.
there is a good book if you haven't read it about Texas called The Tacos of Texas. And
Oh,
it's a really good
really?
book. You can get it, pretty much every Barnes and Noble has it that I've seen. I've seen it in California. It's called The Tacos of Texas.
Oh,
And if I
interesting.
remember correctly, the author's name is Mando Rayo, and really good. And it breaks down, and I think Texas has 10 distinct taco regions based on exactly what you said, where people came from, um, and kind of the food influences, and how different parts of Texas. And I
Hmm.
believe, according to the book, the kind of the traditional taco of South Texas, where we are, is barbacoa.
Oh,
That's
hmm.
that's kind of the
Delicious.
traditional of yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you decided to start a food blog and
Yeah.
also your newsletter. And so
hmm
when you are focusing on, is it traditional foods that you would say of
I
Mexico?
would, yeah, it's typical to what you would see in different, like food like you might eat in Mexico. And now in different parts, if you go to different parts, there's huge arguments over what this dish is called or
Oh,
what this dish has. So, but so I would call it authentic in the sense of from my experience in the places I've lived and what I've learned to cook where I've been. I know that it's a type of what I would call a type of quesadilla called a sincronizada. And I
oh.
learned what a sincronizada is in Monterrey, and that is it's a flour tortilla, and generally a flour tortilla, it's got cheese and ham. So basically I would call it a ham quesadilla. In Reynosa, Tamaulipas, which I'm really close to here in South Texas, like they call it sincronizada. That's a whole, it's a it's a completely different thing, and it's much more elaborate. It's the cheese and it's got chopped beef. I think I would probably call what they would refer to in other parts as a gringa. So, but I would call the food, maybe want to put authentic, but it's food typically as cooked or the way that I learned or the way I was taught or however I picked up. And I think what probably I don't know, but what I'm good at or kind of the focus is I try to write the recipes for somebody like me. I didn't have a lot of experience with Mexican food when I first got there. And then you start going to the market and you see all the chiles and you see all these things. It's like, well, it looks really pretty, but what do I do with this stuff? Right. And everything is kind of like, and I think a lot of people maybe have traveled to Mexico where they've gone out to eat and there's dishes. My strength would be in that, or what I'm interested is kind of making it accessible to people that maybe have experienced it but don't have a lot of knowledge in ingredients or techniques, and to show that actually it's pretty. Most dishes are at least home cooking, and probably the blog recipes are more something like you would eat at home. They're not typically sort of more elaborate restaurant dishes.
Mhm.
If that,
Yeah, which is great because when you think about it, a lot of times you do have something on vacation and you think, "Oh, that was so good. How can I recreate that at home?"
hmm
And so that's great that you are showing people and a lot of times too, like I don't know, in restaurants the scale that they make things is just not going to be practical, for a home cook.
It's different for a home cook. And a lot of Mexican cooking is really variations on a theme.
Mm,
That if you can work with dried chilies, you can make almost an infinite variety of salsas and sauces and things. Its techniques are pretty similar. Maybe the ingredients are slightly different. Salsas are, everybody has their way. If you're going to make a salsa verde or salsa roja, everybody kind of has there's sort of a general, you're going to have some tomatillos, you're going to have some serrano peppers, you're going to have some onion. And each person who makes it maybe this person puts a little more onion in it, or this person puts a little more. But almost if you can make salsa with like fresh chilies or salsa with one with fresh chilies, one with dried chilies, you can make almost anything, right?
mhm,
Like, obviously there's specifics to each thing, but it's pretty, you start to be able to, it's like, oh, okay, a salsa verde and a salsa roja are really pretty similar.
mhm,
Similar ratios to ingredients. I think a lot of Mexican food is like there's kind of general ratios
mhm,
in home
mhm.
cooking, and because most people when they cook at home they don't break out a recipe, and I think like our recipes are really good, get you started. So you haven't done anything, you can do the recipe, you can try it out as it is, and then you work it and you adapt it, and eventually it becomes your own. But it's a good jumping off point.
Yeah, I like that. And going back to what you said, I think it's so interesting because a lot of times, like I will do like my mom is Korean, and so, but I know that the way that she makes kimchi or the way that she makes bulgogi is not always the way every single other Korean person does it. Like you were
hmm
talking about, sometimes grandmas or moms or dads or whoever is making it, they'll have their own little spin on it. And
hmm
then somebody grows up thinking, well, this is the way to make it. It's like,
hmm
well, that's how your mom made it.
Right. And exactly. I can't say, that this is not canonical. This is the ultimate, the way that I do it that is the one and only way to do it.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
way that I do it or the way that I learned to do it or how I've adapted it. So I think the recipes are good. I think, that people have enjoyed the recipes. And so, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've seen your recipes. They look delicious.
hmm
I know I'm like salivating over this salsa one that you're making soon. I know that you're doing a live, and so that's,
hmm
yeah, that'll be very exciting. Well, so your blog and your newsletter kind of focus on the things that you have learned there. And when you did, so you were talking about how you kind of had a cafe, and obviously somebody instructed you or helped you or was your kind of worked alongside you.
hmm
What was kind of your takeaway from that? I mean, would you ever want to own a restaurant again or?
Uh, yes and no.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed it a lot. I like the people. I like being there. I like the everyday. A restaurant's different than a lot of other kind of, it's called retail business because your merchandise goes bad every few days,
Oh,
potentially. Or
yeah.
so that like I like being involved with the food. I can't say that I love the administration part as much, but that's
Mhm.
probably one of the most important things, or the most important things. Yeah, I think restaurant culture is a little different in Mexico also. It's a little bit
Mm.
more relaxed. It's a little bit more, so I think there's a little more time to, and we were in kind of tourist places also, like
Mm.
Puerto Vallarta and San Miguel de Allende. So it's kind of, people on vacation. It's a little bit, a bit more relaxed than say just sort of I don't know, regular place is the right word, but where the great majority of our clientele would be people on vacation, people visiting.
Mhm.
So, that made it kind of nice. It was
Yeah.
a bit more laid back.
Yeah. I was going to say a bit more chill versus somebody who's like
Right.
wants to get in and out for lunch because they got to get
Yeah,
back to work.
it's a different
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, that's good. It's great that you had that experience. I don't know, I feel like everybody should work in a restaurant at some time in their life because it really
right.
does, it kind of opens your eyes to a lot of things and
It's
I
a
think it
great
makes,
learning experience for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And yeah, so I think, I guess kind of in like now that I've been working, doing whatever I've been doing for a while now, it's kind of like I like food, I like education,
Hmm.
food culture, education, and so that was kind of an interesting part of it is getting to learn everything and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
Well, speaking of education now, so it seems like in your newsletter and in your blog, you are doing some educating because you're sort of telling people about maybe the history of a dish or obviously instructing them in how to do that. So that
hmm
maybe feels sort of full circle in a way
right.
for you as well. So,
The
yeah. So, are you thinking about classes maybe to offer people? Because I think that would be so exciting to learn
We
from
we are
people.
we and we've done classes in like when I was in San Miguel de Allende and also when Andres was in San Miguel de Allende. Right now he's in Spain, and
Oh,
so so we're working obviously online. So we used to do in-person classes, but we've also done the online, and we're kind of like I'm a teacher by trade. I'm teaching right now in Texas.
mm,
And so I wasn't working as much in the blog over the past couple of years. And so we're kind of re-energizing it. We worked on it, but we're kind of making a bigger push and we're going into, we're starting a series of like Saturday cook-alongs every first and third Saturday of every month.
mm,
Is going to be approximately 1 hour cook along. We pick a dish and anybody who wants to learn. And so
that's
so
great.
we are kind of restarting that.
Yeah,
Um, and
that's good.
I do like that part, and I've been like moving it over to Substack. I like it because there's a lot more interaction. Because with
Hmm.
the food blog, it started 10 years ago, and the whole blogging
Hmm.
world has kind of changed.
Yeah,
And I do like that, like Substack, there's a lot more interaction. There's people to talk with, and you
yeah.
get more feedback. But yeah, so speaking of the classes, there is, I don't know, the first class is actually going to be from today when we're recording. It will be tomorrow, and
Hmm.
that'll be our first Saturday. And then basically it's the first and third Saturdays. And we're starting with a dried chili salsa, one called salsa borracha, basically means drunken salsa because it's made with beer. Anything that's referred to as a salsa borracha is a drunk salt because so a borracho would be a drunk person like, and so a borracha, salsa borracha is a drunk salsa, and that's going to be a really good one because to do it, it's with chili pasilla, which is a mild dried chili, and so. But anyways, that's our first one. That's what we're working on starting the following day,
Yeah, that's
and
exciting.
so
Yeah, that is something to really look forward to also. It's
yeah,
great that people can plug into that and, learn on those lives and ask you
right.
questions. And yeah, very interactive and nice. Well, something that I always talk about here is the rise of AI recipes and just untested recipes that seem to crop up
Hmm.
all over now online. And so I like to ask the question of how do you kind of parse things out? Especially because your specialty is Mexican food. Like when you are looking at a recipe for maybe a Mexican dish, or maybe even any dish, when I think about it, what are the things that you look for and think, okay, this is going to work and it's going to be great, or wow, somebody who does not know how to cook wrote this?
I don't, until you asked, you sent me the preliminary question, until you asked me, I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess I like to cook. I consider myself a pretty decent cook. And I guess I can kind of pick up on when somebody knows what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That mostly I would say I look for a person who appears to have some actual real interest in what they're doing. Because there's a lot of like food blogs that maybe it was a person that wrote it, but it's just a sort of I would call it kind of a generic money-making food blog.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of the food content out there. So I think it's more, I'm looking for, I don't know if you call it a connection, but there's some like, oh, that's like a real person who
Hmm.
has some connection to the food or some more than just I'm going to post a recipe because I'm going to make money.
Yeah.
So I guess that's
Authenticity, really. Yeah.
yeah, I guess you could call it authenticity, but somebody with a genuine interest in their
Hmm.
and that seems to have some sense of what they're doing.
Hmm.
I don't have any formal process where I go through a checklist. Okay, is this going to be a good recipe because this, or this? But so and I know in the Mexican kind of food blogs, there's some really great ones,
Mm.
and but I think AI is popping up more and more. I know everybody's kind of freaking out about it. Like
Yeah.
an AI is going to take over and it's going to ruin everything. I have kind of a contrarian take on that.
Please share. I would love to hear this.
I think it's going to open it up more for actual, just kind of real people. I mean, you can make already the AI videos of people talking and doing things are like mind blowing, and it's going to be even more so. But I think it's going to open up for real people who have real experience, and it will actually be better because anybody can make a Mexican food blog or make Mexican cooking videos. You can use AI.
Mhm.
But the AI doesn't have, if you have some experience. So I have the experience of 25 years in Mexico.
Right.
AI still can't copy that.
Right. That is a
They can
really
make a
good point.
salsa recipe, and I've even checked. I've done. It's like I put in, make me. I went. I think it was probably ChatGPT or one, and make me a salsa verde recipe. You know, and it came up, and it was like probably not going to turn out that bad. It's pretty simple, but I do think that actually that like real people with some real experience in the area, it makes what you have maybe more valuable.
Mm. Mm.
So, I could be totally wrong, but right now I'm not so, other than just like drowning out people doing interesting things because there's so much, it makes it harder to find
Mm.
like the interesting people doing interesting things just because there'll be more content.
Mhm.
But I think as long as people can kind of discover what you're doing, somebody who has a real experience that it still can't be, you can replicate the recipe, you can replicate the basic cooking steps, but you can't replicate the whole experience and the feeling behind it. So
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong, but I'm not that worried about it. It seems to me that there's a lot of interesting possibilities that will open up.
Hmm. I think
Yeah.
that's a really good point too, because I think that, like you said, it can't replicate that. But I think also your point about like a lot of sameness out there. There's a lot of sameness, and you think
Hmm.
about like people just putting something through Chat GBT or whatever. And so I think that the folks who are really passionate about what they're doing and who really do have a different take or who have that, 2 decades of experience, that they are still going to stand out. And so, yeah, I think that's a great point. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm not a doomsday person either, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yay, that's great to hear."
The tools are interesting. The technology is amazing.
Mhm.
because I teach, I've been looking at the tools to see, what do they do? Because students use them all the time
Mm,
to cheat, but also like you can use it. You can use it, hey, check my work for grammatical errors, and you can use it for research, and there are other things that are actually pretty interesting, I think you can use it for. But I still think somebody who's doing something good
mhm.
has the opportunity there'll be different opportunities, it'll come about differently, but
Yeah.
stuff always changes, right?
Yeah.
So, I started dabbling in, websites. I had a blog about Puerto Vallarta a long time ago, and it was pretty easy to rank it in Google. Just hit the right keywords and it'll pop up in Google, and then Google changed the algorithm to try to get better results. And so there's this
Mhm.
constant change. This
Yeah.
is bigger, faster, but
Mm.
getting your website seen and ranked in Google used to be pretty easy, and then they changed it, and you had to adapt to it and work in some kind of adaptation phase. I don't know. I
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
those
know
are,
where it's going, but so far I'm more optimistic than not.
yeah, I love that. That's great. That's great. I'm on that team, optimistic
Okay.
team. Well, normally guests will also share kind of one of their favorite recipes. I don't know if you've chosen one yet. I will for sure put a link to it, but if you want to talk a little bit about it, you're welcome to.
So I was looking at some of the different salsa recipes, and I think like if you understand Mexican cooking, salsa is in a lot, and Chile's in a
Mhm.
lot. So, start with salsas. I think with the salsa, I have noticed. I forgot who I was talking to the other day, but living in Mexico, when you're cooking in the United States, and the way that I grew up, like in a house, is when you're looking at like, hey, what am I going to make? What's for dinner tonight? You base it off kind of what protein do I have? Do we have some? Oh, we have some chicken. Okay, we'll make chicken today.
Mhm.
I find that cooking, and I think a lot of people, or my experience in Mexico, is that I've got some salsa verde. What goes with that? You
Oh,
build your meal around, or at least I do in Mexico, in the way it's like, oh, I got salsa verde. And because it can go with, you can use it with chicken, you can make beef tacos, you can put it on eggs, you can do all these things. It's like, oh, I got salsa verde. What else do I have?
mm,
And so I think, if you're interested, work with the salsas. Probably, another thing that when it comes to a bit of a tangent, but in the United States, the whole idea, if you notice, there's the idea of like, ghost peppers and the fatally hot peppers. And it's sort of a competition. Who can eat the hottest
yeah.
chilies, and who can do all of this? In Mexico, it's more like the chilies that's a condiment. That's an extra flavor that you're adding. It's generally not a competition. Who can eat the spiciest stuff? And different chilies they add different flavors to dishes. But
Right.
so that was really, there was kind of just I was looking at like maybe to start with something just a classic salsa mexicana, like with some roasted tomatoes and roasted serranos, and kind of your basic
Hmm.
salsa. Like that
Yeah.
would be like a good place to start. And then maybe I can share. I think I make a really good pozole. And I love pozole. That's probably
Oh,
if it's like a desert island dish, might be pozole, right? That might be the one. So, if somebody's
okay.
interested in more, like a more elaborate dish, I think I make a pretty good pozole.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, whatever recipe you want to share, I will happily put a link to that because that sounds
Okay.
great too.
Okay. I think maybe the salsa mexicana and maybe the pozole one also.
Yeah, yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, as we wrap up, I do want to ask you the best place that people want to, if they want to connect with you, where's the best place to reach out to you? Whether that is to, subscribe to your newsletter or to sign up for a class or to, ask you
These days it's
questions.
gonna be the Inspired by Mexico on Substack. That's
Okay.
it's just inspiredbymexico.com, but base is Substack, and you can just reach out through Substack is
Okay.
probably the easiest.
Okay, great. I'll put links to all
And
of that too in the show
okay,
notes.
cool.
So,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Douglas,
Yeah,
for being on
so
today and visiting
that was
and
fun,
just
and
sharing your expertise.
well, thanks
Yeah,
for having me, and
yeah,
appreciate it, and hopefully it was of some benefit to your viewers and listeners.
Yes, for sure. Yes, I think everybody who doesn't love Mexican food? I mean, honestly.
I believe that is the number one most popular food in the United States. Like if
Yes,
you look at number of restaurants, different types of restaurants, I think Mexican food in the US is number one.
yes, that is, yeah,
And
that's
so,
correct.
mm,
Yeah,
and so,
well, thank you so much.
well, thank you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, see you soon.